Okay, good evening, Sutton United faithful. How are we tonight? Good to see you are joined tonight by a very, very special guest in Mike Cornwell. How are you, Mike?
Fantastically well, thank you, Greg.
Good stuff, good stuff.
Good evening to everyone who might be listening.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there'll be whether it be live or beyond the live ending the stream, I'm sure there'll be a lot of keen listeners out there. So yes, Mike, it's a pleasure to interview you as being the man selected to do so. You've got a very interesting career at Sutton, obviously one of the heroes we had back in the day in the 1980s, and that's where our conversation this evening for our listeners will, of course, be centred a lot on. But so yeah, Mike, I mean, just generally speaking, how are you?
Very well indeed. I mean, the lockdown thing was a new experience for all of us, and compared to most people, I'm very lucky. I've got a lot of space in my house. We're full lockdown. My two grown-up sons, one's working from home, the other's been furloughed. We've got lots of space. We have a big communal garden. We live in central London, so we're surrounded by big parks. And so in the grand scheme of things, I think we've been much more fortunate than many. No homeschooling of kids. And so we've had plenty of space. So and none of us thus far affected by any nasty virus, so yeah, can't complain.
Well, God willing, that'll be something that doesn't actually have to worry about anytime soon. So yeah. I mean, obviously you live in central London now. Personally, I live in Ealing Broadway, so maybe it doesn't affect me as much. But how do you find generally the streets? I mean, obviously we're kind of slowly building back up to a point where I think we're approaching normality, maybe, but it could still be a matter of weeks away, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's been extraordinary. I mean, the listeners won't know, and maybe a lot of my teammates won't, Tony Raines will, but I cycle a lot. And because once I had a half knee replacement 3 years ago, running was deeply uncomfortable. But so I cycle a lot, and I cycle a lot all year. It doesn't really matter what the weather's doing. And I have to say, cycling in lockdown has been just extraordinary. And I've done a number of sort of photo essays of central London, with literally no one around. It's been spooky as a weird word, but it's just been so weird not having any people around in any of the significant, London landmark areas. It's just been amazing, and much more fun cycling, by the way, because London drivers are typically idiotic. So it's been a lot safer on the road, although the traffic is now building almost back up to normal, I think.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we're reaching a point where cycling will actually be something you can do without fear of being run over by a bus. So yes, but anyway,
the mayor promised it quite early on, but there's a ton of new cycle lanes appeared over the last 2 months, both big and small ones. I mean, there's a cycle lane on the whole of Park Lane now, where before you took your life into your hands cycling up and down there. But yeah, no, they've done a lot, and I suspect the work from home thing is going to carry on much more significantly into the future anyway. But I think just people have discovered that public transport, whilst it's very efficient at getting you where you want to go, it's not very pleasant. And actually, when the weather's okay, you can cycle and walk, and it's actually a much more pleasant way to start and end the day.
100%, yeah, I totally agree. So yes, just without further ado, I mean, the reason everyone's kind of tuning in tonight is to, obviously, you're something of a cult, legendary figure at the club. So I suppose let's just kind of get straight into it. So in terms of going back to the start, whereabouts did you grow up, and what did you know of Sutton? Of course, when you were growing up as a teenager, becoming a footballer.
Yeah, all good questions. Yeah, so I'm a Brighton boy, and so I grew up in Brighton, and I lived in Brighton till I was 28, and when I first joined Sutton, I was living and working in Brighton. So and my sort of guide to get me out of Sussex football and onto a kind of bigger stage, which obviously Sutton clearly was at that stage, was a guy called Colin Woofenden, who was another legend of the early 80s Sutton's team, but he also was a legend for Walton and Leatherhead, won amateur cups and all sorts of stuff. And he was a Brighton lad. And I think Colin was the main route to my joining the club. I wasn't driving then. He drove me up. You know, I used to meet him in centre of Brighton, and he drove me up, drive me back, and to training and to games and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because obviously it's all a long time ago. I joined Sutton in 1979, so it's a very long time ago. And I think there were two things that happened to prompt the club to think that maybe I could become good enough to play for Sutton.
Yeah.
And that was I was that season, the 78-79 season. I was playing for Horsham.
Yeah.
In Sussex County League Division 1, and we played Sutton in a cup game at Horsham on the muddiest pitch in the history of muddy pitches. I don't actually remember what cup it was. It wasn't FA Cup, so it might have been, I don't know, one of the lesser cups, but it wasn't the FA Cup. But anyway, we won 1-0. I scored the only goal, and then later that season, completely coincidentally, I'd had an injury, and I was coming back from injury, and I played for Horsham Reserves at Sutton against Sutton Reserves, and we won that game 1-0. I scored that game as well on a freezing cold, very cold, windy night at Candidly Lane with absolutely no people watching. So I think those two things. But the club had, I think, approached Woofy, and Woofy knew. I didn't know Colin actually, but Woofy knew about me because I was doing quite well in Sussex football, and so when I got the approach to join, I think Colin was instrumental in that. So I'm totally grateful to him.
Fantastic. And like I say, obviously, I was talking to Tony about you. I was born in 1983, and I didn't actually move to London until like 2 or 3 years ago. So I've only really known something in a kind of the kind of modern sphere, in this kind of paradigm. But back in the day when you were playing, you were involved in like some quite memorable games. Obviously, your first competitive goal was against Oxford City in early September of that season. Was that right?
Yep, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, but what caught my eye was the kind of Anglo-Italian Cup against Mantova, where you absolutely kiboshed them 6-0. I mean, what was the Anglo-Italian Cup like back then? Like, what would you compare it to now?
Well, the year I joined, Sutton had won it the year before the Anglo-Italian Cup, and so we were defending the trophy, and to be honest, the games were just brutal. Yeah. They were all brutal, especially the away games, where it was just outright thuggery. And of course, I was still relatively young and new to grown-up football, and it was all a bit scary. And the older senior players like Larry Pritchard and Keith Walden had to really look after me and some of the other younger players. And of course, Tony had his big brother John in the back line with him, and one or two other notable, very senior players, Dave Collier in goal and so forth. So, but those games were absolutely brutal. I mean, that 6-0 game, I think I'm right in saying they had 3 players sent off. Was that in Italy or was that in England? In England, in England, and they again lost in the sands time. I'm pretty sure it was 3, and just outright thuggery. and every time we scored a goal, they became more thuggish. Really? Yeah, and Keith Walden had his neck broken quite deliberately in an away game. I can't remember which of the Italian teams it was. It was fierce. That was a completely new experience for quite a few of us, actually. Yeah, of course. Of course, that was quite a comprehensive victory, 6-0 against Mantova. So it's basically your version of playing Europa League final, yeah? Yeah, well, no, exactly. Yeah, it's exactly what it was. Yeah, it was completely different to anything a lot of us had ever done before. I mean, for the lads that had obviously won the trophy the year before, they'd been through it all before and had some sense of it. But it is completely different when you play teams from another country, and you travel a long way to go to an away game, not just on a coach up to north or on a train up north, but getting on the plane and staying in a hotel and all that stuff. Yeah, no, it's great. Wonderful experience. Yeah, it does sound like it would be absolutely fantastic. And I think I will get to the kind of 80s team and the old gang, what they were like and who the big characters in the dressing room were. But the following season, you actually broke your cheekbone in a 2-0 win against Wycombe. And that led you out of the game for 4 months. What was that like to kind of have that? I mean, obviously, it was Tony Rains's fault because obviously he took the throw-in, so it must have been his fault. Hopefully he's listening in and he knows it was his fault. Or if he's told me ever since, he said, when you do a when you back flick from a long throw, you put your head forward in a straight line. You don't flick your neck.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I broke my cheekbone quite badly, and it was quite an interesting time because that was the first proper injury I'd ever had as well. And it was notable for a couple of things. One was I after being taken to the local Sutton hospital, which was completely ill-equipped to help me with 5 fractures of a cheekbone and an eye socket. I was then taken to a specialist unit in Roehampton called Queen Mary's, and they had a dedicated unit to facial surgery injuries, and so I was incredibly lucky in that sense. I went to probably the best place in the whole of the south of England to get fixed. More notable than that is where I learned to love Guinness. The male ward, it was a tiny unit, and the male ward, every evening, they brought us all a bottle of Guinness to help us, I guess help our spirits and keep us all, smiling. Because there's a lot of people there who had far, far worse things happen to them than I did with my, kind of headbutt injury. But that's where I learned to love Guinness. So that was a very notable thing. And once the injury had healed and it was all wired up and it stayed wired up, for long haul, I then went on loan, I think it was for a month, to Epsom, who were in the division below at the time, but had a very good team. And I had a month on loan there, and it was a really good, again, it was great football education because, I turned up for the first lot of training with a group of lads. I didn't know a single person there. I didn't know the manager or any of the other coaches. I didn't know any of the players. I'd never played at the ground. Didn't know a single soul. So it was a good test actually, and happily I played 4 games and scored 5 goals in those games. So it was partly about getting back to match fitness, but it was also actually a good football education and test of character in a way, because I was dropped into somewhere I didn't know a soul. So it was I had great memories of it. I made a lot of good met a lot of really good lads there.
Yeah. Do you find that loan spell at Epsom kind of solidified you and kind of developed your character as well? Like while you're away, obviously you just came back from a horrible injury, and then to then can be thrust into that dressing room.
As I said, it was the first proper injury I'd had. So you've got, your confidence gets bashed when you have your face bashed in.
For one of the better expression, bashed. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to get over that, and then secondly, to go on loan somewhere where I didn't know a soul, that was a good test of character as well. It's particularly because it was designed to get me back, playing at Sutton. So it was good. It was an unhappy memory on the one hand, but good memories on the other. Yeah,
of course. You then returned for the Christmas derby, didn't you, against Carshalton, where you actually scored in the 2-1 win?
Probably. You know what? I can't remember. It's always a mystery to me. I've apart from all the lads who were at Sutton when I was there, who we're all in quite frequent contact. I've also got a Worthing WhatsApp group, and I'm in frequent contact with those guys as well, which is mainly a Brighton crew. And they talk in detail about all these games that I was obviously a part of, and I don't remember a single thing. It's just the weirdest thing. I think I was definitely there. Yeah, they were saying I was on the pitch. Yeah, they were saying I scored a goal. Yeah, I can't remember any of it. It's so weird. So I'll take your word for it that when I came back, and of course, scoring against Carshalton would be double sweet. The local derby and all. And we never lost to Carshalton when I was at Sutton. So that was I was pretty pleased that we managed to get through several scrapes with them during my time and never lost one of them.
Yeah, and it's all about derby dominance, of course, and that's always good to lift your spirits. Whether or not you remember it or not, it's still what matters is the streets remember, Mike. So yeah, that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, but that season, of course, you then that was the kind of springboard for you, and you remained a regular in the squad for the rest of the season, which eventually culminated in you playing at the FA Trophy final at Wembley.
Yep. Yeah.
What was it like to walk out at Wembley and be?
Well, it was incredible, you know, and I was a very lucky boy, because if Joycey hadn't have been injured, he'd have almost certainly played, and I'd have been on the bench. So I was incredibly lucky to play, and of course, I have some very vivid memories and good memories of, you know, the whole, you know, going to Wembley, you know, the pre-match, the after-match, we met the mayor that week, and of course, being able to play on Wembley was just joyous, actually. I don't think we didn't really do ourselves justice on the day, I don't think. And they had one player whose name I can't remember, but he scored the winning goal, who was significantly better than anyone else, and probably they deserved to win, and he deserved to win because he was outstanding. Yeah.
I mean, what actually happens? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would love the chance to do what you did and run out of Wembley. But see, on the day, of course, you met the mayor the week before. But what actually happens at Wembley? Do you walk the Wembley Way? Do you get the bus? Like logistically, how do you get to the dressing room? Is it a long walk to Wembley?
No, we had a coach up early in the morning from the ground. There was a lot of media at Gander Green Lane. Obviously, we went up. We were booked into a hotel right by the ground. I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was right by the ground. We just chilled out there and had a pre-match meal early, obviously I think about 12 o'clock. And then we got back in the coach and drove a very short distance, you know, round to the stadium. Yeah. And you know, that magical moment when the coach, you know, drives up to the gates open, and you drive into the stadium, and you're posited in this kind of gangway area that then allows you to walk down to the changing rooms and stuff. So yeah, I remember that vividly.
That's fantastic. I mean, I've been to Wembley, the new Wembley, as a fan, but I'm a little bit too young to have experienced the Wembley. But what I do remember, of course, is Scotland. The last time Scotland and England played at Wembley, Scotland won, and that's all that counts, Mike. Yeah, and yes, I do hold on to it.
That was the only time they won, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah. Big Don Hutchison, yeah, you can't beat those days.
Yeah.
But yes. So yeah, of course, like from there, obviously it ended a disappointment. Of course, you didn't do yourself justice, as you say. From there, obviously, you hit quite a kind of critical junction in your life. You then underwent a successful operation to remove a brain tumour.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's such an inspirational story to have coming out the other end of that and fought it so hard. What can you tell the listeners about the kind of what kind of inspiration can you, I suppose, give off to the listeners about how hard it was upon finding out? Because I appreciate it's quite hard to talk about, but I mean you could literally save the life by talking about it.
It's really interesting, you know, because I can remember when I decided, I kept getting these weird headaches that were fierce headaches, very piercing headaches on just sort of over my right eye. And I remember a game we played at Woking. It was a night game. And after we came in, I think we drew the match or won the match. It was a good result and everyone was really happy. I can remember that. But I tried to get into the bath without taking my kit off. And I can't remember. Somebody said to me, "What are you doing?" I said, oh yeah, all right, yeah. And there was something going on with my head, and I kind of didn't know what was. I kind of laughed off trying to get in the bath with my kit still on. But anyway, I then went to hospital and, you know, got to see a neurologist, and the neurologist said it sounds like classic migraine. You know, we'll give you a prescription for some stronger medication than aspirin, and off you go. You should be fine. Just make sure you take the medication as soon as the headache starts. So off I went. I was thinking, well, that's fine. And I took the medication when I got these headaches, and then it just had no effect at all. It was just hopeless. So I was at that time working at American Express in my hometown in Brighton, and despite how long ago it was, unbelievably, I was using a computer a lot. So this is 1980, and I thought, well, maybe because I'm looking at a screen all day, you know, I didn't wear glasses or anything. I thought my eyesight was perfect. Maybe I should get my eyes tested. So off I went to an optician, and we've never been to an optician before. Bear in mind, I was 24 at this point. Yeah. So I went to the optician. He did all the charts and checking the eyes and all that. And at the very end, he got the bright light and looked in the back of the eye sockets and kind of muttered a bit and kind of wrote a note, put it in an envelope, sealed it up, and said, "You just take that back to your doctor."
Yeah.
And of course, I went outside the optician, opened the letter, read what it said, and it said, this gentleman's got a shadow at the back of his right eye socket.
Yeah.
So you should refer him for further tests. And I thought, oh, well, that's good. At least I know what it is now. It's some sort of weird shadow. Hopefully they can figure it out now. And I didn't think, obviously, for 1 second that it was anything serious, partly because I was 24 and you think you're physically invincible when you're training so much and fit and healthy and well and doing all those things. You don't, and you haven't had any setbacks like that in your life at that point. So you just think you're invincible. So I didn't think for a second it was a brain tumor. I just thought, there's some weird stuff going on at the back of my eye, and they'll fix it and it'll be fine. And of course, my doc referred me back to the hospital, and I saw the same neurologist who this time decided, with the evidence from the optician, that he should probably take a look. So I went in for a in and out in a day scan thing. I don't think it was. I forget the name of the scan, but anyway, they did a scan, and of course they identified that there was a large black swelling behind my eye socket in the brain, and they weren't sure at that point whether it was a tumour or a blood clot of some kind, and obviously they would need to do surgery, whatever. So I found out 3 weeks before the Wembley final. Yeah. That I had the tumour, and my surgery was booked for 2 weeks after the Wembley final. Did Rainsy mention this last week?
I don't think he did actually, no.
Well, the only person that knew was Tony Raines, because, he's my closest chum, and I stayed with him and his brother, him and his mum and dad the night before the Wembley final and stuff. And so I thought I'd better tell someone. And on the Friday night before the game, I said to him, look, I need to tell somebody, but those headaches, I've had it diagnosed, I've got a brain tumour, but obviously you can't tell anyone. And I've decided I'm going to play because, it's a one-off chance, and I've been playing the last and training and everything's fine, and I don't feel adverse effects, and I'm going to be absolutely fine. I'm sure it's going to be fine, but Tony was a little uncomfortable knowing, and obviously not being able to say anything. So it was just calculated risk, and on the basis that I've been playing for months and months and months with it, and without any major problems, so I just decided to play. Yeah.
So in terms of, obviously that kind of forced you out for a year. Was that your choice to be out for a year? Was that the kind of medical advice to get for a year?
They bloody lied to me. They said, you'll probably have a few months off, and then you'll be fine. And then as soon as the surgery was done, and it looked like I was going to make a solid recovery over time, they said, well, that's it. You can't play any physical sport for a year. So that kind of, it was just taken out of my control and out of my hands. And obviously they knew what they were doing. So I think I started training again after 9 months. But obviously no heading, no physicality, no nothing. So that was an enforced layoff, and a year off, recover the body.
Yeah, I think it's probably, obviously it's for the best as well. But when, of course, you eventually did return, it was at the start of the 1982-83 season, I believe, and it was with Worthing. And now, you've then gone from hero to villain, because a month into the season, you scored for Worthing against Sutton in a League Cup tie. Do you remember that?
No, that was the funny thing. What happened was, obviously I was very happy at Sutton, but my job had changed. I'd got married. I'd changed house. There was a lot going on in my personal life. I mean, all of it good, but it just seemed to me that, and I still wasn't driving at this point, and Colin Wiffenden had left Sutton. So the notion that I would have to get to Sutton twice a week for training, and or once a week and once to a game, and then all that. And it just seemed like too much to take on. And I don't know what was going on behind the scenes. Obviously, I discussed it. I probably discussed it with Barry Lloyd and with the chairman, and just said, look, I don't really want to leave, but my personal circumstances are such that I just don't think I can do the travelling with my new job and all the rest of it. So I don't know quite what what was going on behind the scenes, but obviously, having told the club that one way or the other I have to leave because I wanted to play closer to home, I then got approached by both Worthing and Bognor. Yeah. It's kind of the two. Worthing had won Division 2 that year with Barry Lloyd as manager. He's a famous ex-player, played for Fulham and top bloke. And Bognor were in the same league as Sutton, and managed by Jack Pearce, as another kind of legend of that part of the world. And they both wanted me to join, and in the end I chose Worthing, even though they were in Division 1 of the Brighton League, because I knew a few of the lads because they were Brighton lads, and really because of Barry Lloyd. And I really liked the idea of playing for him, and I played a pre-season friendly for them and Bognor before I made up my mind. And having played for them, I just liked the style of football that Barry believed in, and it was full-on gung-ho attacking. Marvellous. Yeah. And so I opted to join Worthing. The fee was paid. I think it was 10 grand or something, and to buy me out of my contract. And so I went to Worthing, but it was again it was forced by my own personal circumstances, and I wasn't driving at that point and all that stuff, and I just didn't think I could do the travelling on my own, because it would have been public transport and a nightmare.
Of course, yeah. I mean, of course, you say there, of course, your time at Worthing was glittered with good memories because you knew a few of the lads down there. Barry Lloyd was there. I mean, it's not, you were quite fairly prolific too. I mean, you played in nearly 150 games for them, scoring 50 goals. That's 1 in 3, and then that's probably the most successful time as they gained promotion to the main Premier Division, and then obviously finished runners up to Sutton, ironically, in 1995. I want to ask you. Exactly. I wanted to ask you about Mickey Edmonds. Now, he is, I think, he had a career record with them that was 278 games and 235 goals. What was it like to play alongside him?
Well, it was we were tailor-made for each other, and of course I knew Mick really, really well because we were Brighton lads the same age. We played against each other in school football. We both represented Brighton boys, Sussex boys, South East England boys, all that stuff. Yeah. And Mick is, he and Paul McKinnon are the two best forwards I've ever played with. No disrespect to Joycey, no disrespect to Efan, any of those other wonderful players, but they were just so clinical. Yeah. And Mickey Edmonds was the most clinical finisher I've ever played with. He wouldn't do a great deal running around, defending, all that stuff, but that was fine because that's what my job was. And we played a full-on 4-4-2, and I'd do all the running around, and Mick would just score the goals because he knew exactly where to be, and he was incredibly clinical. I think he must still hold the record, which I'm sure will never be beaten, of 53 league goals in 42 league games in the Isthmian League. And I mean, that season was just unbelievable. I mean, that many goals, and of course, the other thing about him was he always scored in the big games. Well, pretty much always. Yeah. It was like Ronaldo. The bigger the stage, the more switched on he was. So it was great playing with him, and we were just too gung ho forward looking, and we didn't defend well as a team, but it was great fun playing there. It was really great fun.
Yeah, I think sometimes you just have a telepathic understanding with your partner.
No, but I mean, it's just basic stuff. But we talk to each other all the time, and we when we're having a pint after the game and stuff, we'd say, look, on that near post run, if I'm going down the right wing and I'm on my own, always go to near post, because I'm going to struggle to get it to the back door. So if you're always coming near post. So we just had these little things that we always knew where each other were going to be, and so it just worked. It really did work.
Okay, and that's obviously that was a very, very happy time at Worthing, especially post surgery and post illness, of course. I think the listeners are beginning to get very excited because they can see where the conversation is now leading to. November 1985. Now that's the month where you rejoined Sutton, and on your I suppose your kind of return debut, you scored both goals in a 2-0 win at Barking, and you played a significant role in a successful defence of the Isthmian title. So then, of course, you were then a prominent member of the side at conference level, and then the 88 season. Now this is where it really gets interesting. You were heavily involved in the FA Cup run, and we have a question from the floor. So James King has got in touch to say, before we get to the football aspect of it, which was clearly very successful, what pranks do you remember from that cup run, like in terms of the group of boys?
What? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. What prank? What kind of practical jokes? What pranks were played in that dressing room with the boys? What ones that you can repeat?
This is the trouble, right? Most of the lads will remember all the pranks and all the things, and I'm like, I was definitely there. I remember it. I can remember. We were definitely, I can't remember what game it was, but it was an away game where we had an overnight stay. And inevitably we won the game, and then we were out on the town, and then we all came back. And the hotel was kind of an old-fashioned building with lots of nooks and crannies, and had a big hallway that led into the main part of the hotel. And on the outside of the building, there was this kind of big arch thing. And Paul Rogers and Mr. Dawson, two of the railway children, had positioned themselves on top of this thing. And every Sutton player that came back from, straggling back from the night out, got doused with beer from this position. Yeah, so that's the kind. I do remember that, but there were so many other things that went on that I probably never found out about, because for some reason, the kids, as it were, tended to not punish me in the way they did some of their teammates with childish pranks. I don't know whether they just thought I just wouldn't approve or whatever it was, but I was often exempted from the kind of treatment that they gave each other, which is very nice of them, actually.
Yeah. The benefits of being a senior member of the squad.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I mean, that was such a brilliant time, because we had such a great squad. Those 2 or 3 years, we had such a great squad, and winning the league again and getting up into conference, and then the 2 cup runs on consecutive years. Well, it was such good fun.
Yeah.
And the thing about when the year before Coventry, beating Aldershot and beating Peterborough and things like that. I mean, we beat those teams, and were significantly better than them on the day. So it wasn't, there wasn't any kind of fluke about it. I mean, we just had a really good squad of players, and a kind of, Barry Williams, the manager, was just trusted us all to do our jobs, and just would basically set us up. And as you know, we worked really hard on the set plays, and we had wonderful set play exponents, Mickey Stevens and whatnot. So we're people that really could deliver balls into dangerous areas, and everyone knew how to do their job. It was fantastic to play in that team.
Yeah. On the question of being fluky or lucky, now there is a bit of there's a lot of debate around the club. You scored in the 3-0 home win against Aldershot in the first round of the FA Cup.
Yeah.
Now, was it a cross or was it a shot, Mike?
Well, I was aiming for McKinnon, and it went high.
So what can the audience draw from that?
You weren't there, as you won't remember, but it was raining very hard. The pitch was very slick, and I was belting down the right wing after a ball which McKinnon had dummied. And I had a couple of touches, and I was getting closer to the kind of penalty area on the right wing area, And there was only Macca up there. It was just he and I on the break. And I aimed for him, and it just went high and flew over the goal into the goal. So I couldn't possibly claim that to be a shot, although it did look like one.
Oh, well, it's presentation's all that matters sometimes.
Yeah,
as we both work in marketing, we both know that. So, yeah.
Exactly.
So then, of course, you scored a brilliant goal against Peterborough in the second round that then earned the third round tie against Middlesbrough. Now, back then, it was at Ayresome Park, wasn't it? And
yeah,
did you
fantastic.
So you're up at Ayresome Park. Am I right in saying Bruce Rioch was the manager?
Yeah.
That's all right, yeah.
Yep.
So what are your kind of memories of that night?
Yeah, Gary Pallister was centre-half with, what's the guy's name who's been a manager for lots of clubs, Middlesbrough and all sorts of teams. Yeah, they had a fantastic centre-back pairing. You know, Pallister, they won promotion that year to the top flight, and Bruce Rioch was the manager. And that was, I think, was that their last season at Ayresome Park? Or maybe the last but one, before they moved to a new stadium. So, yeah, no, that was brilliant. It was 30,000 people. We got a standing ovation after the game from a lot of their fans who'd stay behind. Because, again, we played extremely well, and with a bit more luck, header off the underside of the bar before they scored. With a bit more luck, we might have pulled it off. But anyway, great experience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, you've gone from playing in the non-league football to playing against 30,000 people at Ayresome Park. Like, that must have been a culture shock.
But it's fantastic. you could ask any of the lads. I mean, and to be fair, all the top pros say it. There's nothing better than a full house and a really raucous crowd and a wonderful atmosphere. I mean, it just makes you want to do more and better. It's just fantastic. Yeah,
as then obviously, and you'll have these memories for a lifetime. Did Bruce Rioch say anything to you?
Yeah, they came in the dressing room afterwards, but, incredibly decent bloke, and he came in the dressing room and thanked us all and said how well we played, and, we wished him all best in the next round and whatnot. No, it's lovely. No, it's really lovely. And they were a good bunch of lads as well, but I think they were a reflection of the manager, do things properly. Pallister then signed for Man U at the end of that season.
That's right.
So, they had a really good bunch of lads. They had Ripley on the wing who won the league with Blackburn later on. They had a very, very good team. Well, they got promotion, so that's how good they were. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and of course, then I suppose an ounce of misfortune follows you again. In the first of the following season's FA Cup ties at home to Walton and Hersham in the fourth qualifying round, you broke your leg really, really badly, and you then kind of missed out on the season's momentous run. But however, you were involved in some capacity. All you need to do is ask a BBC producer. Do you know what I'm going to say now?
Yeah, the idiot with the crutches dancing around on the sideline. Yeah.
Well, I think they call it a very nifty jig on your crutches. There you go.
Yeah. Obviously, I didn't play in the game, the Coventry game, but I felt as much a part of it as anyone who was on the pitch, because that's the group of lads it was, and the manager and the staff and the chairman and whatnot. I very much felt a part of it. And obviously we can all remember pretty much all of that day, including rehearsing those set plays in on the muddy pitch and whatnot. And fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, was that a pretty hazy night after that in the in the bar?
It was. No, it was always a hazy night. It was always a hazy night. That was it. The joy of playing in our day, and everyone knows it's dramatically changed now, is that the social aspect of it was incredibly important, and the bonds that are formed in the group, during those, whether it's a few beers after the game and a quiet night, or several beers after the game in a nightclub, F-and dancing topless in a nightclub in Chelsea, yes please. Like you did it several times, and if you had his body, you'd do it too. But it's just, obviously I didn't stay in the game. After I'd moved to New York, it was difficult to stay in the game, and I never got back into non-league football. But it's dramatically changed now. That the kind of whole social aspect's gone, which is, I think, is a great shame. But there we are.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think that social aspect and the kind of social camaraderie that can be generated from these nights out, do you think that's missing from the modern game?
Well, I think so, but I mean, so much has changed, right? You know, the whole dietary thing. You know, even Sutton, you know, have been pretty much they're not full time, but pretty much, you know, players training a lot off site and you know doing 3 sessions a week, and you know, players coming from all over the place. You know, we were largely a local group. You know, even I moved up to the Sutton area eventually, so I could be closer to training and games and stuff. And you know, and we only had 2 or 3 players that came any kind of distance at all. So we were all inverted commas local. And you know, and I think there's a lot of clubs now. Worthing have done this over the last 2 years. They've gone back to they had a few years where they had quite a lot of success, where they had players coming from everywhere, and now they've decided to just follow the local model, you know, and have several teams. They've got a 3G pitch as well, and they're now they're now having age group teams, boys and girls, all the way through the ages, and they're trying to, you know, develop their own talent and people who are from the area and feel and care about the club and have been there since they were kids and all that stuff. And I think that's exactly the right thing to do.
Of course, like I mean, I think a few even modern players would agree with you. I mean, I think to generate the camaraderie required to be successful, sometimes it is just about going for a pint with somebody. It's just about not even the pint. It's not even alcohol. It's just sitting in a bar, getting to know someone for a couple of hours and having a laugh.
Well, no, it's exactly that. You know, you get to find out what they're doing in their life and what problems they're having, and whether there's anything you can do to help. You know, it's hardly rocket science. It's just, you know, when you're coming in for training and then you train and then you're coming in for a game, you don't really get a chance to, you know, discuss all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like it becomes a safe arena.
You don't get to know the characters and you know what's going on behind the scenes that you don't know about. You know, it's just and that camaraderie is a huge part of, you know, the success that I've had in both at Worthing and at Sutton, for sure, for absolutely sure. You know, and lifelong friendships.
Yeah, of course that you still have to this day.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course. I mean, okay, obviously, like you did return to play 2 games of football in season, but obviously that was like effectively the end of your Sutton career. Then again, with 248 appearances and 62 goals to your credit, that's quite a phenomenal return for the fans. And we do actually have, you were originally signed as a striker, of course, but undoubtedly, and I think the faithful at GGL will absolutely opine this as well, that your best performances were probably in a slightly deeper role behind the strikers.
Yeah, no, definitely, yeah. Playing in the hole. Barry Williams Conley said, just play in the hole, support the front 2, get in advance of them, everything will be fine. And then within 5 games, he's saying, yeah, but you need to get back as well and defend. You know, so I was then doing full pitch doggies. But luckily, I was light of foot and quite quick, so I could do it physically. I agree. Actually, I was far better playing off the front 1 or front 2. And supporting them and getting in advance of them. It was also the most enjoyable football that I played as well.
Yeah, of course. And I think obviously like your intelligence, your inventiveness, and your link-up play created a lot of goals for the likes of McKinnon and for the likes of Dennis.
No, it was fun. It's fun. You know, if you play with really good players, they were good lads, then it's just a joy, isn't it?
Yeah, but it just becomes so easy for you. So yes. We do have some questions from.
If you think about the players that I was lucky enough to play with, I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, that whole group through that, you know, pretty much that decade actually, and obviously the things have revolved again, and there's been, you know, several significant teams over the last few years as well. But that group was a phenomenally talented group of people. You know, where a number of people went pro. You know, a number of people that could have gone pro but chose not to because they were earning enough money and couldn't get the kind of money that they wanted to get going pro. And but they were just all really good lads and really good players. And I say, Barry Williams just trusted us to do our jobs. You know, we weren't overcoached. You know, we were set up in the way that we wanted to play, and everyone knew their job, and we all did our job, and we played as a team. And that's in the end, if you play as a team and you've got good players, then you'll be successful.
Of course, yeah. So that's we do have a few questions down from very, very keen fans in the live chat. One is from Thomas Mitchell. Hello, Thomas. What a legend you are, Mike. You must have enjoyed living by the sea.
I love Brighton. I still love Brighton. My sister still lives there. My parents both passed. My brother lives in Thailand, but my sister's still down there, so I still get down there. I've still got a lot of good mates down there. I have a WhatsApp group with my two best mates from school. So I still get down there. Yeah, I love going down there. I would never move back down there, but I love going down there. Just smelling the ocean when you come out of the station and walk down Queen's Road, just marvellous.
Fantastic. We do have a second kind of couple of comments from Ryan RDR. Hello, Ryan. So he says, hello, thanks for the service, Mike. Are you happy with where Sutton came this season?
Hard to say, because I saw one game this season. Obviously I follow their results keenly. Obviously, always some of the first results I look for my various teams. But I think with the change of manager and a lot of players leaving, a lot of players coming, I think actually, bloody hell, hats off, mate, because I really feared the worst. Because when you have that kind of turnaround of personnel, it's discombobulating, I think, for the ones that stay. And obviously the manager's got a big job to do. The good news, obviously, the manager's been there a while and understands the club, and the club obviously trusts him enormously. So I'm sure they'll build on that, and hopefully, if next season gets going any time when it should, they'll have had a season to bed in, and hopefully can add a couple of more decent players to the squad, and they can give it a proper run.
I agree. It was a very good turnaround, given the turnover of staff, like the playing personnel. Of course, that was always going to be a hard task to integrate the new ones with the old ones. So yeah.
Well, and also Doz have been there a long time, and been very successful. So it's just replacing him is always going to be difficult, right? It's just and I know that manager worked directly with Doss and knew him, but when the guy who's been the main man for a long time goes, it's always really difficult first year of transition.
Yeah, I totally agree. We actually have another question from James King. Hello, James. He's saying that Ken Ireland. We actually do have Ken Ireland coming on our show on Tuesday. What kind of interactions did you have with Ken over the years?
Well, he's Barry's assistant, so he was the conduit between the players and the manager often, and he was one of the lads, as assistant managers often are, and as Ken will tell you, the best left foot in the club, bar none.
Really, even as assistant manager, yeah.
Yeah, no, he'll tell you that. Right? Don't preempt this away. He won't be listening to this, so that's good. But don't preempt it. But at some point, he will tell you, if you can fish it out of him, that he had the best left foot in the club. and in fairness, he did strike the ball extremely well with his left foot. Yeah, I do love a kind of outrageous sense of self. I do love that. No, he was deadly serious. Deadly serious.
Ah, well, maybe without his own self-vindication about it. So yeah. Anyway, exactly. So yeah, I mean, that's a very, very quite an eye-opening chat, I think, for the audience and the listenership in terms of what you did do at Sutton and the kind of stories you had. But I think your life post Sutton, now, I think there's a little bit of ambiguity surrounding that. So you mentioned you went to live in New York for a while, and you were you're a marketing executive with American Express. Yeah.
Yeah, so in late '89, as I was coming back from the broken leg, I interviewed for a role that was in New York, and to my astonishment, I got the job. And so from about January, I was training and playing the odd game in the reserves, and trying to get back into the first team. The club knew from then that I'd be leaving in the middle of March to go to New York to take up the role. So, I actually, can't speak ill of the dead, but Keith Blunt was manager by then, and Keith wouldn't put me in because he knew I was leaving, and I was quite cross because I wanted to get back and play at that level, and I absolutely know I was good enough in the context of the squad we had that season to have been playing more games than I played. So it didn't leave a sour taste, but I was a bit cross with him, and I kept saying to him, look, just play me. I know I'm going, but just play me because I'm going, and I won't be around, after middle of March. So yeah, so it was I was a bit cross with him, but we left on good terms and everything was fine. Yeah.
Oh, nice. I mean, how long were you in New York for then?
So I was then there for 4.5 years, and it was interesting from a football point of view because having just got myself back from the double break in my leg and got my confidence back and everything was working well and whatnot, I wanted to play in New York. And when I got there, obviously it was way before they had the new professional leagues.
Yeah.
They still had an East Coast league, and New York had one team, and it was managed by a former Watford manager called Ken Furphy, who was an Irish guy who played for the Republic of Ireland, quite a famous bloke in his own right. And anyway, I managed to get his phone number, and I called him up and said, "Look, this is me, and this is what I've been doing, and I'd really like to play, and can I come and train with the team and whatnot?" And he said, "Well, look, yeah," he said, "you're more than welcome to come and train and play." He said, "But there's a 2 foreigner rule, and I've got my 2 foreigners, so you won't be able to play."
Mm-hmm.
And that was the end of my football career.
Oh, really?
Well, because there wasn't another team in New York. There was no little leagues. There was no mini leagues. There was no amateur football in New York at all. Very much. This is 1990, right? So,
yeah.
And New York had this one team that played in the East Coast League. I forget what it was called, East something or other. And when Ken said, "Look, I just can't play you. I've got my 2 foreigners signed," so that was it. So that I gave up gracefully and took up watching American sport.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you play any other, extracurricular sports?
No, I didn't play any sport. I had to learn to go to a gym, which is completely alien. Exercising indoors, that was weird. And I bought some rollerblades. I bought a bike, and I kept myself fit. And I would once a month I would come back, and Paul Rogers, Curly, had joined Sheffield United by then, so I used to come back and go and watch him play, or go and watch FM play. He was at Norwich, and get some football, see my family, and I got my football fix that way, because obviously the games weren't all televised then either in New York. So yeah, it was kind of 4.5 years of keeping in touch with it, but not really full on. I watched a lot of American sport. I watched especially basketball. I saw Jordan play countless times at the Madison Square Garden and all that. So, yeah, I adopted basketball, and that was great.
Fantastic. The Last Dance obviously has kind of ignited interest across the world, I think, of Michael Jordan. So, yeah, you're a very lucky person to have seen him live. And
I'm so lucky. And Larry Bird and all the rest, that whole generation. Because the Knicks had a really good team, and they had a couple of great coaches during that period. They didn't quite pull off the championship, but it was great fun being in Madison Square Garden for a full house game against the Chicago Bulls. Marvellous.
Fantastic. Thomas Mitchell has got in touch again to say that Keith Blunt also annoyed Phil Dawson. We had Phil Dawson on the show a few weeks back, maybe even this week. And, in that regard, did Keith Blunt's management let him down?
Well, Keith was Keith. He had his opinions, and he would never hold back from how he would tell you. But that was just his style. Everyone's got a different style, and I know. Yeah, Phil didn't get on with him. Probably the same reasons. I think he was as blunt as his name, right? It's just his style. He was very, very direct. Not really interested in emotional intelligence and those sorts of things. Again, I'm not speaking badly of him. It's just the way he was. He was a school teacher. And he talked to everyone like they were his school kids. He told everyone what to do. It's just his style, And of course, that style was so different to Barry, who was, as you know, gregarious, charming, fun, funny, clever, and trusted all his players to do their jobs. It was just a radically different step.
Yeah.
So, but if you don't, in the end, I left because I got the job in New York. But if I'd have been there full time and he hadn't played me, I'd have left too. So, it's just the way it is, right?
Sometimes that disciplinarian approach doesn't always reap the benefits it can
He was a school teacher, and he talked to everyone like they were his school kids. I mean, that was my impression of him. You know, and I trained, you know, quite a lot with the squad, and played the odd game as a sub, and played the odd game, and got fit playing in the reserves. And you know, I was just trying to be professional, and you know, I wanted to play football before I left for New York. So I was doing everything I could to persuade him to let me play.
Fantastic. Of course, obviously you went to New York and started with American life. Came back after 4.5 years, and now you're back based in Sutton. Oh, sorry, Central London. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. We moved back. We live in W9, which is Maida Vale, and I've spent my career in the advertising marketing industry. So like a lot of people, I'm currently not working.
Yeah.
So when all this when the lockdown's over, I've got to get busy again.
Yeah, me too. I'm also on furlough. Actually, I'm also a marketing executive for an accountancy firm in the city. So that's
right. Okay.
Yes, I'm also on furlough. So I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah. Well, good luck, mate.
And you.
Hope you figure that out.
Oh, hopefully soon. So yes, like I say, Mike, it's been a fascinating conversation with you tonight. We hadn't spoken at all before.
No, it's lovely to meet you.
Yeah, and I've certainly got a clearer picture of your career and your kind of career path. But be it the ups and downs, of course, with surgery, with the highs of playing at Wembley, with obviously the gluttony of goals that you scored for Sutton and Worthing, of course. I always like to end my interviews on one kind of main question, and it centres on, it's a scenario-based question. So, and I'm always interested to hear what the kind of variation of answers is. So
I don't know what's coming now. What's coming now?
Nothing sinister. Don't worry.
Oh, okay.
So you're on a 15-hour car journey to Inverness, up in the north of Scotland, and you're allowed to pick 3 or 4 celebrities, dead or alive, to accompany you on this car journey. I put you on the spot here, but who would you choose?
3 or 4 celebrities.
Yeah, dead or alive, to accompany you.
Okay. George Best.
George Best.
My hero from my inspiration for how to play football, because he always made things happen, and that was my mantra: make things happen.
Yeah.
So Georgie Best. I need to think about suitable company for George as well, obviously. Who else would I have?
The old kind of Pelé good, Maradona better, George Best, you know.
I would have Marvin Gaye.
Okay.
Because we need somebody who can sing and play music. And again, I was in awe of him and saw him live a couple of times back in the day before he was sadly taken from us. And we need 2 ladies. Who would I take? Jane Fonda.
Okay.
Because I think she was the woman that I had the hots for the first in that celebrity lineup. So that's how old I am. So Jane Fonda, because she's enormously clever and very beautiful. And we should have another female singer. I know, Aretha Franklin.
I did have Franklin. What a musical car that's going to be.
Yeah, look at us. Wow, that car's going to be rocking.
Yeah, I mean, some of the answers I get range from the Queen to David Bowie, but now we've got Aretha Franklin, so I'm glad we've ticked that one off.
Yeah. Bowie would be wingman.
He'd have to be. I mean, I don't know if he's ever been asked to play that role before, but and he certainly won't now. He was taken from us 4 years ago, but yeah. Nevertheless, well, Mike, I've got to say, I think on behalf of myself and those in the live chat, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you tonight. I do hope that work picks back up fairly soon. All at Gandhi Green Lane wish you very, very well, given the service you gave the club. And one final question, actually, from James King. Of the 4 people, who sits in the front seat?
Oh, tough one. Jane Fonda.
There we are, James. And now you can sleep tonight, James. Okay. So
well,
yes.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed chatting. It's brought back lots of amazing memories, actually. Nostalgia in a way here. And thank you to everyone who's listened in or will listen in the future.
Of course, and that's what it's all about. Retroactively perhaps asking themselves questions that they wish they could ask you. But anyway, so thanks everyone for tuning in. It's been an absolute pleasure to be joined by Mike here tonight. And I'm sure I'm not alone in being inspired by tales of recovery, tales of success, tales of, well, in some cases, being put down and told your career is over in America. And we do very much look forward to being in front of the camera at Gander Green Lane soon. Hopefully that's not too far away. So all the best, everyone. Hopefully you're all staying very, very fresh and safe in lockdown. And we will meet again very, very soon down the lane. Until then, I'm Greg Clark. It's been great. Thank you very much. Have a safe night. Take care. Good night.
Bye-bye now.